You yourself need to be persistent following whatever processes are important for you. Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the importance of persistence. So we're going to talk about this in a couple of different ways. First of all, you as a sales manager, you need to be persistent with your salespeople. What I mean by this is, unfortunately, humans are creatures of habit and we're lazy. So your salespeople are going to take the path of least resistance. In our previous video, we talked about the importance of process. If you have processes laid out, unless you are diligent and persistent about making sure those processes are enforced, your salespeople are going to take the path of least resistance and do the easiest thing they can. Unless you're persistent to the point of almost babysitting your salespeople, you are going to not get to the results that you want. So you yourself need to be persistent following whatever processes are important for you. Then the next thing we want to talk about is persistence in that sales process. We talked about in a previous video what the steps of the sales looked like. So you have opportunities that then go on demo drives, that then we talk about on paper and do worksheet, that ultimately end up buying cars. That's great, okay? So we sold a bunch of cars, but what about all those people who have not purchased a vehicle? What do we do with them? How do we keep persistent with our follow-up on those people? And what does that process look like? How and when and what are we going to do to follow up with those people? So let's talk with an example. You had a customer come in today. Your salesperson wasn't able to close that deal. You met with that customer and you weren't able to close that deal as well. So unfortunately, there was no deal to be had that day. Now what happens? So next day, what activities are there for you as a sales manager, for your salesperson to try and get that customer back in the store and finalize the deal? So of course, now you're going to have to understand what was the reason that customer left. People don't have time these days to just come in to look at cars for fun. They were there for a particular reason. So we have to assume that they were serious buyers. So they took the time to come into your store, spend time with your salesperson, go on a demo drive, work through numbers, but ultimately not buy. So what do you know about that customer? Why did they not purchase? Was it that they had to check with a family member? The numbers didn't look right to them. The interest rate was too high. The trade value was too low. What out of all of this was their key thing? And how do we use that to get them back in the door? So first of all, this assumes that you know this information. If you don't, bad on you, because you were not involved in that process. If you're not sure what that key piece of information was that made your customer leave yesterday, you haven't done your job properly. Assuming that you do know, let's say it was the trade-in value, that it was lower than what they expected. Now, when you contact that customer or when you have that salesperson contact, what are you going to say to that customer to entice them to come back in? Are you just going to offer more money for the trade? Are you going to try and spin things a different way to try and encourage that customer to come back in? What incentive are you going to offer for that customer to come back in? There has to be something in it for them to take the time to come back in and see you. So you need to have that game plan in place before you actually contact that customer. Then, let's say you try and contact them. You can't reach them by phone. You can't reach them by text. You can't reach them by email. Now what? Do we just give up? No. Again, we have to be persistent. What does that persistence look like? What is the next step in that process? Do we try again later in the day? Do we try again the next day? Do you maybe pick up the phone instead of your salesperson this time to try and get a hold of that customer? Again, we have to be persistent in that contact to try and get that customer back in. The other thing you want to look at is how long do you want to try and get a hold of this customer? Do you want to do a 3-day follow-up, a 7-day follow-up, 10-day follow-up? And at what time do you say, no, this one is a dead opportunity and we'll just file it away and move on with life? Persistence is good. You need to have a process around that. You need to define when and how and who is going to make that contact and what is going to be said. And of course, all of this has to be done in consultation with your salesperson. It's not just them on remote control trying to get this customer back in. You need to be involved in this process, because if you're not, they're not going to be successful. So persistence is very, very important in your role as a sales manager, as well as in following up with potential customers. So that is one of the most important things when it comes to the sales process. We'll talk more about profit in the next video. Talk then. Thanks. Bye.